Hello again. This is Professor Marsh, and this is Accounting 220 at Newberry College in the fall of 2022. This is the Chapter 2 review of the quiz, and so let's take a look at it. And the multiple choice question number 1: which of the following is the primary source of revenue for a merchandising business? A, the production of products from raw materials. B, the purchase and resale of finished goods. That sounds pretty good. C, the provision of intangible goods and services. And D, the sale of raw materials to manufacturing firms. And the correct answer, of course, is B, the purchase and resale of finished products. Let's go on to number 2. Which of the following represents the components of the income statement for a service business? A, sales revenue minus cost of goods sold. That doesn't fit in a service business, right? No cost of goods sold equals gross profit. So A is not correct. Let's try B. Service revenue minus operating expenses equals operating income. That sounds pretty good, but let's look at the others. The others have cost of goods manufactured and cost of goods purchased. So C and D are wrong. So it's 2 is B. Service revenue minus operating expenses equals operating income. Let's go on to number 3. Which of the following is not considered a product cost? Remember what your product costs are. Product costs are direct materials, direct labor, and indirect materials. Okay, so those are all product costs, but you got manufacturing overhead too. Okay, but selling expense is not a product cost. So the correct answer to number 3 is D, selling expense, because that's not a product cost. Okay, number 4. Variable costs are expenses that A, remain constant on a per unit basis, but change in total based on activity level. And that sounds correct. And that, in fact, is the correct answer. So let's go on to number 5. Which of the following would not be classified as manufacturing overhead? Okay, would not be classified as manufacturing overhead. And I see that I didn't emphasize the word not in this question, so shame on me. I usually bold those words and italicize them and maybe underline them too. But in any event, watch out for the trickiness here. Okay, so what would not be classified as manufacturing overhead would be C, direct labor. You can kind of look through this. You see the indirect costs, well, that's overhead. Property taxes on the factory, that's overhead. But direct labor is not classified as manufacturing overhead. Why? Because that's a product cost. I mean, that's a direct cost, and it's going to be a variable cost. Okay. Number 6. Which of the following statements is true regarding average fixed costs? Now, this is average fixed costs, so this is a little bit counterintuitive, but you'll get used to this. So average fixed costs, average fixed cost per unit remain fixed regardless of level of activity. Well, that's not true. That's not true. The fixed costs, total fixed cost, remain fixed regardless of level of activity, but average fixed cost per unit, those actually fall as the level of activity rises. And so you look through, obviously, if you've got more activity, then you've got more activity that's contributing to pay off those fixed costs. And so they're smaller per unit. And that's C. That's answer C to number 6. In the cost equation y equals a plus bx, y represents which of the following? Well, that's our formula for total costs. And so the answer to number 7 is D. D as in David. Okay, let's go on to your short answer question and explain the difference between a period cost and a product cost and give an example of each. Now, this was a really easy one to do if you read the whole chapter, because in your chapter, in each chapter, you have a section called Key Terms. And so whenever you have a question like this, it's good to go back and check and see, is this a key term in this chapter? And it sure is. If you go into the key terms, you'll see that period costs typically relate to a particular time period instead of attached to the production of an asset. It's treated as an expense in the period that it's incurred. And an example of that, or examples of that, are many of the sales and administrative expenses. Now, a product cost, product costs are all expenses required to manufacture the product. So that's direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. So make sure that you look at the key terms and help to learn the correct words for the aspects of managerial accounting that we're learning this semester. So that's it for quiz number 2. This is a faster review. I think they'll go faster and faster as the semester progresses. But keep up with your work. Check your work carefully. If you got marked down on your answer for product costs or period costs, I either couldn't understand what you were saying, or perhaps you had some continuing grammatical problems, or a combination of the two. But keep up with your work, move on to Chapter 3 and get that done, and have a great Labor Day. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.